Okay.
Oh, nice.
I got it. So it should be working.
Okay. Do we have any virtual
Um,
meetings? Okay, well, we're just
nope.
gonna go ahead and start. So hopefully y'all are here today for the IEP Lunch and Learn workshop. I am Melinda Elliott. This is my coworker, my friend, my cohort in crime, Wallace Johnson. We're the ones here to do the webinar with you today. If you're here, you have paper copies of our handouts. You have a copy of the webinar that I'm working from today, as well as one of our handouts, the evaluation, and the uh, oh, the certificate. If there is anybody online, you will get those things in an email afterwards. And we're going to go ahead and go on to the next slide. So one of the things that I do at Families Helping Families is I'm an educational consultant. Um, uh, there's Wallace, another one, and there's Beryl, a third one of us. So there's three of us. The other thing that I do that's near and dear to my heart is a program called LACAN. LACAN stands for Louisiana Council Advocacy Network, and we are the advocacy arm of the Louisiana Developmental Disabilities Council. We help advocate for what we call systems change. So it's change on a legislative level or on the Bessie level. Bessie is um, sort of like the school board for the state. And they make policies, procedures, vote on things that go into bulletins, especially about special education, but about education in general. So with LACAN, every year we come up with a legislative agenda. This year we're in legislative session, and our legislative agenda is funding for LRS. LRS is Louisiana Rehabilitative Services. That's the agency that works on employment for people with disabilities. We want to get the full state funding because that draws down a federal match so that agency can do more and more things around employment for anybody with a disability, not just people with developmental disabilities. We're also working on an alert similar to the Amber Alert or the Silver Alert. I don't know how much attention y'all pay to the news, but we have poor outcomes when someone with a disability comes up missing or wanders or elopes or whatever it is that happens. There's a lot of research that shows that when you can respond quicker and respond in a more direct manner, that you can recover those people with better results, right? I'm trying to word those things real carefully for everyone. Um, so we're working on an alert specifically for people with disabilities. So that's two. The three is continued funding for families helping family centers like ours. There's 9 centers across the state, and a part of our funding we got in the budget, recurring in the budget last year, but part of it wasn't. So we'd like them to restore that funding and make it part of the budget so we don't have to talk about it and ask people to help us every year. And then, do y'all know about waivers? Do y'all know what I'm talking about?
I went to the waiver seminar thing a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That was at a park?
yes, that was at
Really?
yeah,
Really?
Preon Lake.
The one over there.
Yeah.
Like trying to think of what it was, but
Yeah.
the Preon Lake one.
So one of the things that one of the issues, and I hate to say issue, but one of the things around waivers is the people that provide services to our family members, especially as they get to be older children and or adults. You know, because at some point, I have a daughter with a developmental disability. She's 37, but at some point it was like, I need a little help, and what's going to happen to her when I'm not here?
Right.
So waiver services are those kinds of supports, and they provide a person, a direct support worker, to help. Well, direct support workers right now in our state, the wage floor is $9 an hour, which you can go to work at McDonald's or Walmart and make more than $9 an hour and not be responsible for somebody's life. You know what I
Right.
mean? So we're working on getting a more reasonable provider rate so that the companies that provide direct support workers can stay in business, and raising that floor for the direct support workers so that we can get them and keep them, and have them trained and maybe provide some benefits. I don't know. So every year in the summer we have community input meetings. Y'all will be on our mailing list if y'all aren't already on there, on our email list. And in those community input meetings, we talk about things that would make life better, including education. There wasn't anything education this time, but including education. And then the DD Council votes on it. They ultimately make the decision. Fact sheets are developed. We start individual visits. I look for people willing to tell their story about one of the legislative agenda items, and I help you. It's not like, oh, put together your story. I provide a lot of help. And make an impactful story. You can tell that in the elevator. You never know when you're going to bump into your legislator. You can tell that at an individual visit. We have a round table every year where legislators, Senator Stein and Senator Abraham, have been really nice and shown up to our round table years and years in a row. What else? Oh, you might go to Baton Rouge and you might testify in front of a committee. But basically, you're signing up to get emails and go through this process that we go through every year to work on the service system. So, y'all consider that. Like I said, it's something that makes systems change in a different way, So let's start talking about IEPs. There's special education services for families of children with and young adults from birth through age 21. So if you don't know it, I'm telling you now, your child, unless they graduate with a diploma, has a right to stay in school until the day they turn 22. Because for kids with disabilities, teens, it takes a little bit longer to get those Carnegie units and or those job skills. So the federal law allows them a little extra time. Whereas most of our kids are graduating at 18 or 19. Most typical kids with disabilities, teens with disabilities have a little bit longer. But anyway, age through age 21 with all disabilities. It could be physical, cognitive, emotional, and learning disabilities. The Families Helping Family Centers, like ours, serve families with children with with disabilities, and we serve adults with disabilities of all ages. People don't always realize that. Adults with disabilities are looking for different kinds of help that everybody might be looking for, as well as things specific to their disabilities. So we do that as well, working with the adults part. We help families attain appropriate education and other services for their children and or themselves with disabilities. And we're working to improve education results for all, because if you improve the education result, and there's research behind this, if you improve the education results for students with disabilities, it helps the entire school. I don't think that I didn't know anything or I had a child with a disability. I don't think people always realize that. But I mean, is research that shows that when you have a child with a disability in a typical classroom, many times the scores for the entire class go up in ways that they can't explain any other way than there was a child with a disability in the classroom that helped provide other avenues for everybody to be able to learn and be able to do the things that they needed to do. Another one of the things that we do is train and inform parents and professionals. We probably have as many professionals that call, like teachers, like therapists, like counselors, like this morning I took a call from a probation officer. There was somebody from the court the other day. I mean, we have a wide variety of professionals that call us for us to explain how these different systems work, whether it's education, social security, long-term supports, finding health care. This Daylyn's another one of my coworkers, and she helps around the whole health care for children and youth with disabilities. Let's see, where am I? I must be going at a different rate than you're going, Wallace.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Let me find the little men that are fighting. Okay, we help resolve problems between families and schools or other agencies. Sometimes I'm working with families and I always like to bring things back to stories. I had a mother that called me the other day and she says, they're just not giving my child the help that they need. They're just not doing this. I got this letter and they're not. And I'm like, read me the letter. So, and sometimes parents bring me the letter or the form or the IEP or whatever it is, the certified plan of care if you're working with long-term supports. And she's reading it to me and I'm like, hold on. This means that they're going to do it. And it's not always clear in that, I call it double speak. Y'all ever listen to science fiction or read science fiction? A long time ago. There was a term double speak where, the words don't always mean the same thing that I think they mean, or they sometimes from one system to the next. So, yeah, the letter was saying that, yeah, we're going to do it, but she didn't recognize it as such. So she thought she wasn't going to get it, and quite possibly would have gone into the meeting and been arguing, and everybody start to disagree because everybody wasn't talking the same language or the same level. So a lot of times we help resolve those problems and talk to families about, yeah, exactly what does the law say? What's the school responsible for? What's they are responsible for? And what's your next steps as the mama, right? We connect children with disabilities to community resources that address their needs. I mean, we have families that call us about everything, about recreation, about summer camps, about just about different types of therapies, about ABA, about we have a resource list. It's actually on our website. And there are things in there about housing, about help with utilities, about just about everything that you can think of. And families call us about all of those things as well. We can tell you where to find it, what to say, how to get it, all of that good stuff. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about is early steps. In Louisiana, okay, let's go to federal law. In federal law, the law that governs special education is called IDEA. And IDEA The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act has several sections. One section is called Part C. Part C is about the services for children 0, so it could be as early as they were born or preemie, to 3 years old. And it's a set of services to provide early intervention to help them catch up if they're behind and keep up if that's one of the problems that they have. In our state, it's called Early Steps. In other states, that section, Part C, might be called something else. And I even put the phone number down there for the Department of Health and Hospitals. But there's an organization called a SPO, a single point of entry, a regional organization that can hook you up with the people that are going to be able to help you get these services. It's not in public school, you know, the 3 to 21-year-olds, the plan is called an IEP, an individualized education plan or program. In Early Steps, it's called an IFSP, an individualized family support plan. But there is a plan that's made that, you know, there's an evaluation. They look at the deficits. They check to see if you have enough deficits to qualify. This is a real supportive time of life and time of services. So Early Step services are designed to help the child and the family, and to be able to support the family to for the child to be a meaningful part of the family. So, like, one of the things I like to compare it to is I saw IFSP, the individualized family support plan, where the mama was saying that she had trouble going to the grocery store because her child cried the whole time, and they the team. There's usually a point person on the team, but the team did some problem solving around being able to involve that child in what was going on. They talked about the colors in the produce department. At some point, the child held the bag, so mama could put the produce in the, you know, those little plastic bags that I hate. The Yeah, they don't want to open, right? Anyway, the child held the bag, so mama could put the produce in the bag. You know, they talked about the top shelves, the bottom shelf, the favorite cereal, all of those things. So the child wasn't screaming the entire time. Because I had one that screamed, one of my daughters that screamed. You know, the grocery store was just overwhelming, and she screamed the entire time. But you know, they help you with things. You know, a child that had trouble, didn't have body tone, and they were trying to figure out how to give them a bath and to make sure not to scare them while they were giving them a bath. You know, because they're little and the bathtub's big. Well, they got a clothes baskets. You remember the clothes baskets, the round ones with the kind of big holes?
Mhm.
So they could prop the child in that little clothes basket so the child had support and wasn't feeling like they were in this big sea of water and wasn't slippery, sliding around as easy. You know, cheap laundry basket, and, you know, made bath time a whole lot more fun. Um, Anyway, just a couple of little examples. Oh, and the main person that helps you develop that plan is called a family service coordinator. They call her an FSC. Um, so, Section 619 is the 3 to 5 year olds. The 3 to 5 year olds, the whole time you're in Early Steps, they're talking about you're going to public school. Whether you're gonna but you have to get evaluated. That's the way it works. You have to get evaluated by the public school, and if you qualify, what is it going to look like for 3 to 5 year olds? So some 3 to 5 year olds go to classes, just like preschool students do. Some particularly at 3 years of age, because they're still little and tender. Sometimes they do something similar to early steps in the public school system. Sometimes they go to Head Start, sometimes they're in daycare already, and somebody from the school system comes to the daycare every so often, usually at least once a week, you know. But there are services for 3 to 5 year olds, and it can happen in a variety of places. Those 3 to 5 year olds are going to have the IEP, like we talked about, the individualized education program or plan. Public school system a lot of times talks about FAPE. I tell my parents all the time, when you don't know what else to say, start talking about whether your child is going to get FAPE or not, because that is like the cornerstone of education in the school system. Are they getting their free, appropriate public education? Is this what they need, how they need it? So breaking that down a little farther, free means it's at no extra cost to you. Now, you're going to have to pay fees because all of those little students pay fees, or their mamas and daddies do. So there's going to be the paper fee and the class fee and that kind of thing. But still, there's not going to be any extra fees because of special education. Appropriate means that it's going to meet your child's individual needs. Public means the public isn't necessarily going to be able to find out your child's teacher's salary, wages, whatever, but they're going to be able to find out the amount that is paid for, a 3-year-old classroom teacher, wages, a range. The public has a right to know these things, and then education, what we think of it is. I always like to talk a little bit about least restrictive environment. Least restrictive environment should start on the premise that most
My what class is broke.
most of our
Well, no, that's free. Sorry about that. Thank you, David.
most of our children to go to school where the kids in our neighborhood go. I would even go so far as saying all of our children should go to school where the neighborhood kids go. I know there's lots of, I live in the real world just like everybody else does. I know there's lots of reasons and lots of configurations why that may not happen. And I'm fully prepared to help you in whatever situation, we all are, in whatever situation you're in. I'm just giving you an idea of where to start from. There is typically nothing that they can do in that bright, shiny school over there that they might offer for your child to go to that they can't do in your school. It's just a matter of figuring out how to get them to do it. And, I was a young mother at one point in time. There's only so much energy and so much time in the day. Do you have the energy and the time to do it? Or not, but yeah, those little friends that they make in the neighborhood, that's going to be the co-workers, that may be the direct support workers, that may be the church members, that's going to be their support later in life as a person with a disability. So the local school system, so we're at the 5-year-olds. We're at what's called IDEA Part B services. These are all part of that federal law that we were talking about called IDEA. They talk again about, I like to talk about the terminology. They talk again about the IEP, about FAPE, and about the least restrictive environment. That's not just for the 3 to 5-year-olds. That's going to be out through your child's entire school career. So on your child's IEP, there is going to be what they call a classification in the school system, or sometimes some people talk about exceptionalities in the school system. There are 13 of those, depending on whether or not your state uses developmental delay. Our state does use developmental delay Developmental delay is used differently from one state to the next. So if you guys move and your child is still in that 3 to 9-year-old range, y'all want to keep that in mind, that developmental delay is sort of changes from one state to the next. But in our state, it's 3 to 9 years old, and it was designed by the federal government because they're little at 3 to 9 years old. And yeah, you might think that they have autism, which means different things in the school system, or might not. Sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what the disability is. You know, they need help. Everybody agrees that they need help, but it's hard to nail it down, and they can use developmental delay. By the same token, they could use one of the other 13 that I have listed here. It doesn't have to be developmental delay, but at 8 years old, people are going to start hustling around, because by 9 years old, by the time that the day they turn 9 years old, the school system and yourself, because you get to help in that decision-making process, needs to decide on one of these 13. So mental disability is actually been redefined in the law, and even in the DSM, that's the medical book that talks about disabilities and the definitions of disabilities. They talk about intellectual disability now. Hearing impairments, including deafness, speech or language impairments. There's a lot of students in the school system. I find kids with autism often in the school system that have a speech only IEP, which is concerning because sometimes we're not taking into account behavioral needs that need to be taken into account. So hopefully they're dealing with that either by adding a 504 plan to that speech only IEP, and or putting accommodations. I told somebody from the school system the other day, we have to deal with the child that presents themselves. And even if they have a speech only IEP, if they have behavioral needs, that's the whole part of individualized. We're dealing with the child that presents themselves. So they either do that with the 504 plan, or they do that with the accommodations and modifications for behavior. And visual impairments, you know, y'all stop me if there's one of these you need me to talk about more. Unfortunately, sometimes I find children with like with autism under serious emotional disturbance, a whole nother conversation. I know many children with serious emotional disturbance qualify for a high risk fund from the Federal Department of Education, because they need more supports than the average bear. Orthopedic impairments, that's where you might find things like autism or muscular dystrophy or other things like that. You know, they use different words like we talked about earlier. Autism in the school system is often a communication disorder, not autism the way we think about it in the medical community. I do spend time at times talking to families about a diagnosis is not the same thing as a classification. In the school system, there's a manual, there's a booklet, or they call them bulletins, where they very clearly spell out what is required for different ones of these exceptionalities or classifications. It's not the same thing as the DSM, the medical book that they use for a medical diagnosis. And that's doesn't mean your child doesn't have autism if that's a medical diagnosis. It just means that it doesn't work that way in the school system. Traumatic brain injury. I do find some young children that were born with that. Often I find people, children and or adults later in life that suffer from some kind of injury that's qualifies as traumatic brain injury. Other health impairments. I find kids with ADHD there. I find kids with mental health diagnosis there. I often find kids there that have like 4 or 5 medical diagnosis, that any one of them by themselves might not be enough to qualify for special education services. But when you look at the totality of those diagnoses, it's really making a difference in school. Specific learning disabilities. You might find dysgraphia, dyscalculia. Those things has always been something that might be under specific learning disability or other types of specific learning disabilities. You can usually tell that from the school system evaluation more about those different types of disabilities. Deaf blindness, because deaf blindness is so all encompassing, it's a classification all by itself, because there's so much around communication that has to be done with a person that has both deafness and blindness. Multiple disabilities, again, I don't see that as often, but that's somebody that has some pretty significant multiple disabilities. And then that developmental delay we talked about. How am I doing for time, Wallace?
12:32.
Do y'all have questions? Because I can talk forever. My goal is not to talk forever, but I want to make sure that you're learning some of the things you need as we go along. We're good? Okay. So, in IDEA 1997, every once in a while IDEA is reauthorized. In IDEA 1977, that they talked about the majority of children identified as eligible for special education and related services are capable of participating in the general education curriculum to varying degrees with some adaptations and modifications. Basically, we're saying that yes, they have a disability. They have a significant enough disability. It's not just having a disability that qualifies in the school system. It's having a disability that's significant enough to qualify for special education services. But even given that, the vast majority of those children can learn just like other children. Their intellect is intact. They can learn the same things. You're going to have to do some adaptations, some modifications, but they should be able to learn the same kind of things. That wasn't always happening in years past. And I've been doing this a long time, 30-something years. At one point it wasn't happening at all in special education. Mm-hmm. But now there's pretty much the understanding that they should be able to learn. Yeah, we got to do some things, but learn like the other students. So, and back to IDEA, this provision is intended to ensure that children's special education and related services are huge, are in addition to and are affected by the general education curriculum. So special education and related services are designed to support the general education, not to be something separate from it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So, let's talk about the child's interests. And your role in, essentially advocate for your child. All right. One of those things, one of your roles is knowing stuff about your child's disability. We help with that. We have people that call and say, we just got the diagnosis of XYZ. Can you send me some stuff about XYZ? We will get on the paper. You can do this yourself, of course, but not everybody has the bandwidth or the ability, because, Yeah, I see the computer. Give me a piece of paper. You know,
Mhm.
it's okay. So, we have the ability to be able to print information and send it to you to make sure that you know things about your child's disability and diagnosis. Sometimes, as we're bumping into more and more chromosome related type deletions, specific little known things about disability. And then his rights. We have a variety of information we can send you about his rights. Just general information might be that I would send you the Southern Poverty Law Centers. That's a law center in another state that also covers Louisiana. They're a regional entity about education in Louisiana because it is different than education in a lot of ways from Texas or from Ohio or from wherever. So it's a booklet. It's particularly about that. We also will send a booklet from the Parent Training and Information Center. There's information from Disability Rights Louisiana. That is a law firm in Louisiana. Every state has a law firm that's specifically dedicated to disabilities. Now, y'all don't get excited when I say law firm because, we get calls from parents all the time saying, I need a lawyer. Well, a lot of times, because they're nonprofit law firms, because there's so many people that need help, what they're doing is class action suits. So they may, but they may not represent a specific child in a specific situation. But the more parents that are calling them about issues, the more likely they are to say, "Oh yeah, I have, 100 parents in Louisiana calling me about this issue. Are we interested in doing a class action lawsuit of some type?" The last one I remember about that was maybe around behavior. It's quite a few years ago. Not to say that there hasn't been. That's just the last one I remember. Okay, so now let us send you these booklets. Somebody talks to you about a behavior plan. Let us send you some stuff that we know that's good stuff about the federal views on behavior or the federal views on behavior plans or RTI used to be a hot one. They call it MTSS now. But dibbles and things that they're doing to remediate like reading or like math. They were at one point in time using that to say, well, we're going to wait until we do this before we start an evaluation. And then there was a law from a letter, a dear colleague letter from the United States Department of Education saying, you can't do that. You can use it as part of the evaluation, but you can't say we're not doing the evaluation because we're doing RTI. So we can help you figure out those things. We can help you figure out, rights and responsibilities. We can help you figure out the chain of command. We can help you figure out who's the next person up, to go to. We can help you figure out, okay, these are the dispute resolution processes from the Department of Education. These are the, a facilitated IEP, mediation, a formal complaint. There's forms to be able to do some of these things that you can fill out. They're going to have some demographic information, but they're going to have fill in the blank parts, and we can help you figure out what do you put in that spot, or how do you word what you put in that spot. Hopefully, we're never going to get there, right? That's always my goal, not to get to the Louisiana Department of Education. But on the other hand, I want you to know that that is an option when it becomes time, right? Let's see, hone your advocacy skills. You call me or you come into my office. Don't be surprised if we're role playing. Don't be surprised if I'm playing the devil's advocate. When you leave from me, I need you to be able to go into that IEP meeting and to be able to hang, right? To be able to, clearly make your child's needs known and know things to be able to say back when they
Yes.
bounce the ball at you, saying, well, we can't do this because that. And I'm going to do it through role playing and by playing devil's advocate. That's how we hone your skills and your techniques. And learning to negotiate for quality services. See, my screen keeps going blank because I talk too much. Okay, so we help you represent your child's interests and learn how to do those. So exactly what is special education? Special education is specially designed instruction at no cost to the parents to meet the unique needs of a child with a disability. That can include instruction in the classroom, the home, the hospital, and other settings. So, if your child is someplace different for whatever reason for a period of time, we need to talk about that. It can include speech language pathology, other related services. That's a special education service under state standards. There are things like travel and training. There's a transition age in high school, and it starts at 16, just so you know. And at that transition age, hopefully before that, but at that transition age, a meaningful discussion, and we have workshops around, okay, so what's my child going to do when they're an adult? Because it's different, often different for our kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Special education isn't a destination or a place. Shouldn't be that metal building. It shouldn't be that room at the back of the school. Should happen anywhere your child is. The lunchroom, the hallways, the second grade hall, wherever children are, those services should be able to happen. Special education isn't babysitting. They're supposed to be learning stuff, just like their peers are. Might look different, might need some modifications, but they're learning stuff. It shouldn't be all of the students. Somebody told me this just the other day. All of the students who take the LEAP Connect, that's the LEAP test for students that are probably not going to get it. I'm not going to say aren't, but probably not going to get a diploma to be able to go to college. They are typically taking LEAP Connect. And they said, this classroom is for the LEAP Connect students. And I'm like, hold up. There isn't supposed to be a place that all students with a particular disability or type of disability go. So how is that works like that? That was a whole other discussion.
Because we're individualized.
So everybody in this special education class should not be taking, I shouldn't say should not. They're all individualized. So, the 10 students in this special education class shouldn't necessarily all be only mainstreamed into art class. It's about that child. Maybe that child is a great reader. Why aren't they going to reading class with all the other students? Or math, or band. I don't know. Band is junior high where my grands are at. But the comment. Well, these students. The students in my classroom don't go to band. We go to art. Wrong answer. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Or the metal building. The metal building always. So remember, your child's not in special education. Your child receives special education. Wherever your child is located, your child is supposed to receive special education services. Special education, that IEP is like a passport. It's a passport for your child to get the help that they need wherever they're at. Whether they're on a cruise or whether they're, hiking in the mountains or wherever they're at. and you can turn that into anything in the school. So this is another thing that affects all of your IEPs is these bulletins. These bulletins are available on the Louisiana Department of Education website. We also have been at times known to make copies of the one or the other of these bulletins if you need them. These bulletins are what our state uses to flesh out the federal IDEA law, the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So the federal law is the framework, and then our state uses the bulletins to flesh it out. Exactly how are we going to do what we're told to do in the federal framework? So one of those bulletins, 1508, is the Pupil Appraisal Handbook. Remember I told you all of those classifications are exceptionalities? There's rules, there's certain things that have to be met, there are certain things that have to happen to be able to choose one of those. You can look in that bulletin if you want to and look and see what it says and start figuring out some of those things and asking questions yourself if you want to. There is a bulletin 1530 that's specifically about IEPs and about extended ESY, extended school year program. That summer program, that often our children are told that they don't qualify for. I can do a whole workshop about that, so I'm not going to talk about that very long.
I have a question too, because like my daughter has been denied that. But I mean, I know she would benefit from it.
Okay, so ESY is not designed for your child to benefit from. ESY is designed to meet one of 4 criteria. One criteria is called regression recoupment. Children during the summer and sometimes during an extended holiday like Christmas or maybe Easter, because Easter's an entire week, will forget things. And when they go back to school, they can reteach it a certain number of times, but sometimes our children still won't remember it, even if after you've told them about it and shown them how to do it. Those children qualify under regression recoupment. Okay, some of our children qualify under critical point of instruction. Okay, critical point of instruction means that they're learning how to potty. And if they miss school during the summer, they're not going to be able to hang on to that skill at school and at home, because you're working on pottying at home, of course. But they're not going to be able to hang on to that skill when they go back to school in August when everybody else goes back to school. Or maybe it's subtraction. Your child is just learning to subtract. And if you take the summer off, they're going to forget everything that they know about subtraction. So maybe your child would qualify under critical point of instruction. And then there's the things about behavior. So maybe your child just won't be able to maintain the school type behavior that they need to be able to maintain when there's a break. And maybe they maybe they go to reading, since we were picking on reading earlier, but because they won't be able to maintain the type of behavior that they need to be able to maintain, they might be in danger of not being able to go to reading like other students. So I'm paying attention to those things all year. And then when they give me the form, there's a form that says that your child doesn't qualify for extended school year, I quite often will say, well, I do believe they qualify. Maybe we need to have an IEP meeting about it. And then, I wait my weeks. 2 weeks is a long time for me. Maybe because I don't have any patients, who knows. But I wait a week, and if I don't get an answer, then I start going up the chain of command. I don't agree with the decision that my child doesn't qualify for ESY. Often, the teacher will come back and say, well, we went back and we looked at it, and maybe your child doesn't qualify. But don't get excited. Extended school year services can be anywhere from 1 to 4 hours, 4 days a week during the summer, and it's not at your child's school in all probability, because there's such a few amount of students that qualify for extended school year program. They might have 2 or 3 schools in the entire district where they have extended school year. So like the little town that I live in, there the elementary school does not have extended school year. My child always had to be bused into school out there on Highway 14. She liked it. It worked for us. My daughter, with grandsons that have autism, finds it more trouble because they want to sleep till noon. And different families, different strokes. But we can talk about more about
Please.
harder about that. Pupil progression. Pupil progression is that process where the IEP team, or the SBLC is what they call it. So SBLC stands for School Building Level Committee, looks at a child that has a disability that may not have met all of the requirements to be able to pass from, say, 3rd to 4th grade, and can say, we're going to pass them anyway for these reasons. So I have grandsons that are big as grown men at 11 and 12. Starting in 4th and 5th grade for sure. My reasoning when I went to the committee was, you're going to have children that are the size of grown men in 5th grade already. Do you really want to hold them back and create that kind of situation? Invariably, the school system said, no, we're going to go ahead and pass them. But there could be a myriad of reasons why the decision is made to go ahead and address them anyway. And then Bulletin 1706, regulations for students with disabilities. Again, more stuff about how this works and how we make it work in our state. I don't even know where I am at. Okay, IEPs. So that there's IEPs from 3-ish to 21. No, you're too far.
I am.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was.
Oh,
There's always that possibility.
Should be on IDEA Part B, ages 3 through 21.
What I thought. But
I mean, do I have something different?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Transportation. Okay. What are related services? Related services are services to be able to make your child, help your child be successful in their regular education classes. The formal definition is it's transportation and developmental corrective or supported services as are required to assist a child with a disability to benefit from special education. So y'all remember that transportation one, right? So here's a list of related services, but this is not a all-inclusive list, it could be other things. So we might be talking about speech therapy, we might be talking about psychological services, we could be talking about PT or OT, physical therapy, occupational therapy. It could be recreation, like therapeutic recreation. I've known the school system in years past to pay for things like therapeutic riding therapy or hippotherapy, the whole horses and things. It can be early identification and assessment. That's part of the RTI thing that we talk about. It could be counseling, orientation, and mobility services. I know at one point, one family, the school system said that they couldn't continue to qualify them unless the parent brought them to a specific type of doctor, and the parent couldn't access that specific type of doctor for various reasons. And at one point, I'm telling the parent, go back to the school system and tell them under related services, medical services for diagnostic or evaluation purposes is one of the things that is a related service. And suddenly the school system was able to figure out how to do it without that visit to the doctor, how to continue to qualify that child. Social work services. Some parents like that, some parents don't like that. There are even behavior facilitators, a related service. Parent counseling and training. The school system had a contract with one of the counseling agencies for a certain number of visits with the parent. Nursing is a related services. Related service? Related services. One of the related services. Like I said, this isn't supposed to be a static list. This is supposed to be a list that there's some give and take depending on what a child needs. So this is where I wanted to be. It's not just the meeting. IEPs are the result of preparation. We have multiple webinars about IEPs. We have the webinar about what are some things you should do before an IEP, during an IEP, and after an IEP. Invariably, people think, oh, we had the IEP meeting, we're done. No, it doesn't work that way. That's the reason they like you to sign that IEP, because you're basically saying, as the mom, the guardian, the parent, however you want to say it, I'm going to keep track of whether the things that we're writing on this IEP are happening the way that I think that we agreed to them happening. And the process. So knowing the process. So if your child came from early steps was, critical in making sure the school system knew, hey, my child is coming. But maybe your child wasn't in early steps. The school system has a responsibility for actively looking for students with disabilities and identifying them. They do that by asking the teachers, sending home forms. There's a variety of ways that they fulfill their requirements under Child Find to identify students with disabilities. And then there's the step that we call the assessment, the eligibility. So when you sign the paperwork for the school system saying we want to have the evaluation, the assessment, there's a timeline that comes into place that the school system has to get a reevaluation too. They have to get that evaluation, that process in gear. They have to get a multidisciplinary team together. They have to accomplish certain things within a certain length of time. So you get to the point where your child is qualified and there's going to be an IEP written, right? IEPs have goals. Some IEPs have the objectives, particularly students with the more significant disabilities will have objectives. Objectives are like steps. Goals are like the big things. So if you don't have the objectives, you need to have a goal that's really robust, that really talks about what are we going to do, what are we going to look for, how are we going to know when we get there, how are we going to identify when we got there. That's part of the method of and measurements. And then you talk towards the end of an IEP. An IEP is a real structured document. Towards the end of the IEP, you're going to talk about placement, related services, things like minutes, how often you're going to go to speech or OT or PT. OT and PT is usually consultative, by the way, but how often that's going to happen. You're going to talk about minutes with the SPED teacher, and then you're going to know how many minutes they're supposed to be with the regular education students. There's whole charts to do that sort of thing. Child line is the school system duty. I think I covered that. IDEA and due process. Due process is a lot like, it's one of those dispute resolution things. It's a lot like a court process. I really try not to get there. I'm always preparing to have to go to a due process meeting, but I really am trying not to get there. But it starts with the right to disagree about the eligibility determination. It breaks my heart when I bump into parents that say, well, they said my child didn't qualify. Because if they'd have known me before, a year down the road, they'd have known that they could ask for their due process rights. They can disagree with that decision, and that there are steps that they should and could take to disagree with that process. Eligibility, if they qualify for IDEA, they could qualify for IDEA, they could qualify for that IEP. They could go through the evaluation and qualify for that Section 504, and they call it an IEP, by the way, to confuse things, an IEP and IAP. Anyway, it's because it sounds so close to me. Or it's possible that they may not qualify. There are students with disabilities that are doing okay in school. An IEP doesn't mean that your child should be making A's and isn't making A's. You must need an IEP. It doesn't work that way for a 504 plan. It's about the disability and about how it affects them in school. So it is there are quite a few students with some type of disability that they don't qualify. Regardless, if you discover in that process things about how the student learns, and they should still be using that in the classroom. That's, the evaluation. You get recommendations at the end of either school evaluations or private evaluations. It is your jobs as the parents, because I only have parents here today, to say, when are we going to do this recommendation, or have we done this recommendation? Or do we need to go ahead and, do this recommendation, especially the school system recommendations? That's their own people recommending certain things. The SBLC is able to gather information, guidance, and support a teacher to help the student before they're actually referred to special education. Parents can be, if they tell you they're going to have an SBLC committee meeting, you can be part of that SBLC committee meeting. It shouldn't prevent the child from working. And we have all kinds of discussions about that. This is a book that and a website. So Rights Law is a husband and wife team. He is a lawyer and his wife is a psychologist, I believe, that worked years ago and eventually were married, on special education issues. They have a website with pages and pages and pages of free information. They also have books that you can order. You know, Amazon is my favorite place. They might sell them themselves on their website now that I think of it, but I always go to Amazon, right? Amazon and Walmart. They have books about everything from, you know, learning to control your emotions, to information about tests and measurements. You get that evaluation, and there's all kinds of stuff on there. And what does that stuff mean? I can help you understand some of that stuff. They can really help you understand some of that
And
stuff.
I have
right?
some of those books if you want to use them as a door prize. I've got some.
Where did you get books? Oh, honey, you and I need to
I
talk.
mean, they're talking about that extra copy that I had.
It's a good idea, because I didn't think
So-
about door
so,
prizes.
yeah, just- I can get them.
Be love. Oh, lovely. Thank you. Let's see. This is more. No, went to the next page.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay. How parent placement and services are decided. Evaluations drive goals. So, in some way, you should be able to tie your child's IEP to the school system evaluation. You know, they have problems with visual processing. I would expect to see a goal with something about visual processing. If not this year, next year. An evaluation is good for 3 years. You can get one before 3 years if you need to. Don't waive your evaluation. You want a full evaluation every 3 years. You want a full evaluation. I don't know about you guys, but my kids changed dramatically in 3 years. Just because you did an
evaluation
3 years ago doesn't mean that means that describes my child now, right? The IEPs last for a year, a calendar year, not a calendar year, a 12-month year. So people will say, we haven't had an IEP meeting this March. We haven't had an IEP meeting this year. I'm like, get out your IEP, look at the first page, look at the top, tell me the date. And maybe the date says that they had the IEP meeting March of 2026, March of 2025. Yes, you had an IEP meeting in the past year, May of 2025. Yes, you had an IEP meeting in the past year. It was the past 12 months. But if you need an IEP meeting in this school year, you ask for one. And when I say ask, I do not mean ask. Yes, do that. But then you go home and you type a letter and you send it to everybody in the chain of command saying, I need an IEP meeting because of whatever reason. You have that right as a parent to ask for, okay, they're not going to give you an IEP meeting every month, but to ask for more than one IEP meeting every 12 months, all right? Okay, good. If you're not involved in the evaluation and developing goals, you're not doing it right. I didn't say that. Please, I didn't say that. But yeah, you're not deciding on the IEP services. And that's what your child needs you to do, to help decide those IEP services, to decide what they need to work on and what next. You can figure those things out. There is documentation on the State Department of Education website that says things about, what time is it? That says things about, this is what you should be learning in 3rd grade science. So you should know generally an idea. You know, there's a list of things that are going on in 3rd grade science. And is my child really doing 3rd grade science? Not. You know? Independent educational evaluations, put that in the back of your mind. You don't agree with an evaluation, there is such thing as an independent education evaluation. You probably need to talk to one of us There's a very distinct process that needs to be followed for the school system to pay for an independent education evaluation, or the school system can take you to due process to prove that their evaluation is right. Generally, it seems to work out better. This is 32 years into this. 32 years? Something like that. 32 years into it, it's generally more agreeable for the school system to help you get an independent evaluation from another school system, a surrounding school system. Works out a whole lot better than I thought it would work out years ago. I thought, oh yeah, the school systems are going to all agree. No, they don't. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It actually works out a lot better than I thought. You, like I said, when they make recommendations on those evaluations, your job is to, those recommendations somehow have to make it into the goals. Where are they? Y'all, this is on particularly the school system evaluation or independent evaluation. This is on the evaluation. Where is it on the IEP? Be sure you ask for a complete evaluation, a comprehensive evaluation. When you're talking about evaluations, you'd like copies of evaluation reports before the meeting. Maybe we were talking about this before the webinar, but I, as a parent, needed to see those things ahead, because my mind just would not absorb all of that information the day that you're showing it to me and trying to talk to me about it. The same way as an IEP. Now, it is written into the bulletins now that you can ask for a draft IEP, but you need those evaluation of reports before the meeting to be able to consider, to show them to your husband, to show them to the therapist. You know, maybe you're getting OT or PT or whatever with your insurance or your Medicaid, to have a conversation with those people. Maybe it's grandma that needs to see it. At my house, it's grandma that needs to see it now. You know, make a copy. You want to keep a clean copy, but make a copy. Sometimes we can help you make copies of evaluation reports. Highlight, underline, write notes in the, corners, that every time you read a report, every time you read one of the booklets, including the booklet the school system gives you about special education, different things are going to jump out at you. Figure, every IEP meeting, you should read the last IEP, highlight things, and then ask other people, like I was talking about, other people in your child's life. More considerations. No, this is about the goals. Let's see. When you're highlighting things, I routinely ask parents, where's your list? Because if you've talked to me for any length of time, you know that I want to know you have a list. You want to have a list of things that bother you. You want to have a list of things that you know that your child is supposed to get. You have no other way of keeping track if you don't have a list. So even once you have a list and you're in the IEP meeting, hopefully you bring somebody. Shouldn't, I'm so sorry, Grandma. Shouldn't be your mama or your husband. Hopefully you bring somebody else, because Grandma and husband are emotionally engaged to help you keep track of everything.
Yeah.
Because you're going to want to write down, I asked for, making it up, I asked for OT. The program facilitator told me she would check on OT. These are columns. The program facilitator said that she will get back to me in 2 weeks about an OT evaluation. That's how you start developing a process of what are the things that we want and or need, and this is where we are in the process. So you know to put it in your calendar 2 weeks from today. Call and ask the program facilitator, hopefully they've already got you, right? But if they haven't, call or email the program facilitator and ask them, did they check? And if they didn't check, call Melinda or Wallace or Beryl and ask them, what do I do next, right? But that's how you start that. And then knowing your non-negotiables. So I call that the priority system. In your list, you need to know, it's a priority for me for them to provide extra time for my child to take their science test. I'm picking on science today. For them, provide extra time for them to take their science test. So, in all probability, I'm not signing the IEP if we can't agree on that. Now, don't get excited if you don't sign the IEP. It's your job to figure out what to do next. Call somebody and figure out what to do next. But that's your first indication to people in the school system. I'm not happy with this IEP if you didn't sign it, right? You want to involve your kids, especially if your kid's old enough to have a preference. It makes me a little bit crazy when they're developing a behavior plan, and let's say you want your child to stop cussing at school, okay? And one of the things is that there's going to be a FHFSWLA report to say whether he did or he didn't cuss every hour of the day. And if he didn't cuss, let's make it low because we're just starting with the child. If he didn't cuss 70% of the day, he is going to get blah, 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 blah. And we've developed this list of things that this child could get. And we've never said, hey, kid, what would make you happy for you not to cuss the majority of the day that we could provide to you? Some kids are going to say, I want computer time. 10 minutes of computer time. You'd be surprised how excited that makes some kids. Some kids are going to say, you got candy? Some kids will give them a candy. Give them a candy bar. Give them a piece of candy. Some kids are, particularly high school students. I knew one that said, I want a book. And it was like, oh, wait. Books are expensive these days. That can be, if you get, 80% and 90% every day, 4 days of the week, we will get you a book on Fridays. Made that kid happy, and he worked for that book because he liked books. It just kind of depends, but you need your kid to be able to do that. And your kid needs to be able, shouldn't say kid, your child needs to be able to see you advocate, right? They need to be able to see you, so they know how to do it, right? That's how they're going to learn. Because as an adult, people don't want to talk to mama. Unless you have a child with such a significant disability that you have some kind of legal document to be able to handle their business, they want to talk to the adults with the disability or not. And even when you have that document, sometimes they want to talk to that adult a little bit. So, a child, Domino, my daughter, has a 5-year-old understanding, and whenever there's an issue, I do have an interdiction. I do have a power of attorney. But whenever there's an issue, Domino has seen me advocate often enough that she knows how to walk into some kind of little meeting and say, I want my mama to take care of that. And they let me take care of anything if there becomes an issue. There doesn't usually become an issue with the documentation that I'm talking about. Measurable goals. How do you do that? So, sometimes a goal will be, Kevin will learn to keyboard. I don't know about you guys, but I can keyboard. That is not what I want Kevin to learn, right? you know, there needs to be some more words in there. By the end of the first semester, Kevin will touch type, 10-finger touch type, a passage of 15 words per minute with not more than 5 errors on a 5-minute test. Something with some meat to it, with some numbers in it. You can do this for almost any subject, and then how are you going to know when it happens? That's the other side. This side of the paper, the other right side of the paper, the left side of the paper. It's going to be determined by teacher judgment or teacher observation. I really don't like those. That's why I want to see some numbers. Show me a chart. Show me a papers with a grade. You have 10. Okay, I had 5 kids. I cannot tell you which one of the 5 did what when. And sometimes they just didn't tell me the truth, right? You have 10 little kids in your classroom and you're saying that he can type 15 words a minute. If you don't have some kind of paper or some kind of chart, teachers are good people. Teachers are wonderful people. They're the lowest people on the totem pole. But how do they remember that? Anyway, this is more information that we put together for you. When if you are virtual, you'll get a copy of it. Well, we can send the people here a copy of it. We can send y'all all a copy of this. These are hot links. You can click on them and go to these different resources. Draft goals. Where do you get them? You get them from your wish list. I used to make copies of my wish list and give them to everybody on the team. I wasn't hiding anything. This is my list. Let's talk about it. Let's see. Oh, so y'all should have picked up this. I routinely, for a student with an IEP, get a parent that tells me I want a child-specific aid. Child-specific aids are really difficult because, if the child isn't there, then you have a staff person that really is only required to work with a specific child. A lot of times what you can get is an aide assigned to the class, maybe even more than one aide assigned to the class, depending on the needs of the student in the class. And the reason that this can happen in a regular ed class is on page 2. On page 2, I should have done this front and back. I wasn't thinking hard enough ahead when I put this together. Look under adults working together. And the second bullet, instructional arrangements that support collaboration, where it says co-teaching and para-educator support. So there has to be enough people in the classroom to support the student's needs. So you might have a student that goes to, let's say they go to regular education reading, because I'm going to pick on reading this time. And they need an aide to be able to maintain in the classroom. And there is an aide in that resource room, but that resource room has a student that needs diapering, and or a student that needs suctioning, or maybe that needs to be moved every so often because of pressure sores, or whatever reasons. And then of course there's all the other students. So in that classroom with only one aide, that most of the time can meet everybody's needs, when your student needs to go out to reading, there really isn't anybody to go with your student out to reading. That's when you can start making the case for, do we have enough adults in this classroom to be able to meet everybody's needs? And so how do you find out that information? So I appear to be fussing, but here it goes. I'm not, but I am. I find a lot of times parents of children with disabilities are isolated because there's so much more to do when you're raising with a child with a disability, and you're not volunteering in the classroom, showing up for, what are those days before school when you get to go and get to know the teacher days? Meet and greet. Good job. Or PTA meetings or whatever. So you don't have the opportunity to meet other parents that might be in the classroom. Because typically when you're signing into a PTA meeting, you're signing in under the teacher's name. So you would know if there were other parents there. Or, if you went chaperone the field trip, which I know, how do you chaperone the field trip when you've got littler kids? We have that problem with the grandkids too. But you don't have the opportunity to bump into those parents, to network with other parents in the community. So then you don't always know the makeup of the classroom. Or maybe your child talks and can tell you, or maybe your child isn't that verbal, but Becky down the road, his child is in that classroom, and Becky down the road's child class talks, and will tell his mama about who is in that classroom. So you kind of have to be a detective. So that's my fuss for the day. But hang on to this piece of paper. You never know when it might become important to you or to another family. That's the second page of that. It didn't fit on here, right? But I still wanted to put it in here so I'd remember it. People to bring with you to IEP meetings, your friends, your child's friends, your extended family. Bring your mama, bring your husband, but bring somebody else if you can too. You know what I mean? Maybe you have a case manager. Maybe you already have waiver services. Maybe you have a DSW already and they would attend.
What about the paraprofessionals as well?
The school system has the right to determine where and when their staff are working. And the school system does not have to let the paraprofessional attend the IEP meeting. So, because they are the employer, they do not have to let the paraprofessional attend the IEP meeting.
Because it's her individual. I mean, she's with her all day.
Doesn't matter. If they pay the paraprofessional, they do not have to let her attend the IEP meeting. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I want an advocate. We have strenuously tried to not attend IEP meetings because the school system responds to us. And then my boss hates it when I say this, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, what's going to happen if you've been depending on me to go to your IEP meetings? Okay, I want to support you. I want to coach you. I want to role play with you. I want to, devil's advocate with you so that you're going to be able to attend that meeting. I will go over IEPs with you, evaluations with you, outside the school system evaluations with you, any records, suspensions, emails. I'll go over any kind of documentation with you to help you be prepared before the meeting. I will probably even tell you a homework. Go practice this with your husband. Go practice this. Figure out what you're going to say about that. I want to effectively support you so that you can make the decisions for appropriate services, so you can bounce the ball back in those meetings, right? The IEP is a negotiation. I don't know of anything in an IEP that isn't a negotiation. So, you know, you bring those skills to the table, you're going to collaborate. You know, the vast majority of people, I can't remember the last time it does happen, but I can't remember the last time I've been in an IEP meeting where I thought, oh, you probably need to do something different. It has happened, but I do believe that they're there to do good things. You can have parent-teacher meetings. Not every meeting has to be an IEP meeting. Sometimes you just want to meet with the principal. Sometimes you just want to meet with the counselor or with the teacher. You know, come prepared to participate as an equal. So you know, don't wear your loungewear to the meeting because they're going to be dressed. They're going to be dressed for business. You know, the teachers at the the teachers and the school personnel, right? Bring refreshments. We used to have a another director at one of the other families helping family centers that used to bring muffins because she liked to feed them. Let's see. You need to think about your disabilities. You know, as we age, we have them. Do you need help? What kind of help do you need? Do you have difficulty reading? Are you going to need help with those? The school system probably isn't going to help with your transportation, but that's one of the things you need to think of. Think of the time and the day of the week in a meeting. As I get older and my disabilities have been multiplying, I do meetings better in the morning than I do in the afternoon. At 3 o'clock, I'm done. You know, having an IEP meeting at 3 o'clock is just torture. I'm not going to get much done and I'm not going to be very collaborative, unfortunately. I can do it, but you can have meetings by phone call. That's not my recommendation, but when all else fails, you can do that. Maybe you can have small meetings. Maybe right before school, you can have, you know, a 20-minute meeting this week, next week, another week. Hopefully, you're going to get to a meeting and it's going to be a signing that you've already discussed all of these things. You know, that's one of the things I hope. Things that you should know, they are going to send you, and if they don't, I'm going to ask you about it. Prior written notice, that's going to tell you what we're having the meeting for. Lots of meetings are just yearly meetings, but sometimes it's because we want to change things in a big way. They're going to tell you who's going to be at the meeting. If you tell me it's me, the teacher, and the principal, okay, well, let's talk about, you know, what you want to happen during the meeting. If it's going to be the director of special education for the parish at your meeting, it's going to be on that form, and I'm going to say, hold up, there's more going on here than I know about. Let's talk. Adult-sized chairs. They used to have these little bitty chairs when I went into elementary. Yeah, that didn't work for me. You know, knowing some of these things. Am I at the end yet? We have whole other webinars where we talk about PBIS, positive behavior, supports, health plans, which is part of an IEP, Carnegie units. That's the big thing in high school. Let's see, where else am I? These are more hot links to the Louisiana Department of Education website and some of the stuff on the website that would be interesting to you. And you have the power to use it. You know, you're half of that IEP team if it comes down to it. I mean, really, they can take you to due process or you can take them to due process. That means you're half. That means they're half. You know your child better than anybody. You've been there the longest. You will be there the longest. You know things that nobody else knows. If you do my evaluation, Wallace and I get brownie points for making sure we get our evaluations. And there's still food out there. Y'all don't leave me stuck with all that food. Y'all got questions?
Put our name on the evaluation.
Evaluation.
Typically, you don't unless you need something. Sometimes there's a question depending on which evaluation we're using that says if you need something, give us your email or your name, because we won't.
On the
give that
back.
away. But yeah, you don't usually put your name or anything on it.
Unless it's something's a problem.
I tell people if you need something, you call me. Have you finished recording?
Oh, I can turn it off.
I just didn't want to let it run on forever.